To get started with this committee of the whole, we are going to start with the, what's that? I don't think I've ever sworn on a meeting, but it might happen. Emergency evacuation procedure. If you have reason to leave the building, if there's an emergency, we can exit from the lobby, either to the east or the west. If for some reason those exits are not available, you can use the doors here behind council. We will take you out through the back. The muster point is located near the gazebo at Lions Park. If you need to come back into the building, you cannot until you've been given the all clear by an official with the town. We are looking at an agenda. Is there any additions to the agenda, Mr. Lepsak?
No, Mr. Chair, no additions.
Excellent. So we are looking for adoption of the agenda. Councillor Mearns, all in favor? Excellent. That is carried. Discussion items. The first discussion item we have up today is the e-bikes discussion. So who would like to jump to the front? I jumped? 3A. Mine has 3A.
Yeah, it does.
Are we looking at the draft that was circulated or the full agenda?
I don't know. It's the one I downloaded days ago. Okay. Okay, then we will look at 3A is the draft mock council topic. So it's just been reorganized.
Thank you.
Everything is on there the same way. E-bikes went to the end. Okay. Good enough. Hi, Krista.
Good afternoon. I have the privilege today of presenting on the report of mock council topics, so an interesting and fun report to write, actually, and to gather information on. Back in June 24th, 2025, Mayor Hansen put forth a notice of motion to have youth decide on what those mock council topics would be. Apparently, kids are not interested in runner ducks like we thought they might be. So we employed some youth to have a discussion around what they would like to see for mock council topics. We got together, 19 of our finest youth in the community, and had a discussion with them. We led them through some brainstorming exercises. We talked about what they love about Sylvan Lake, what they would like to change about Sylvan Lake, and then we discussed what does council do, what does a debate look like in council chambers, and from there they broke down some ideas into themes. And so the two themes really came out strong and loud from them. One was around community safety, and the other was around environmental responsibility. So using those themes, we led the session to discuss important things that they think that council might want to debate, or that a group of grade 6 students might want to debate in council chambers. And we're presenting 4 different ideas that they came up with to put forth to debate. So the first one being that council amend the traffic bylaw. And I will mention too, I learned, thank you, Mayor Hansen, for the discussion around having these topics relate to a bylaw that's already presently something that we have in the town. So the first one was around the traffic bylaw and amending the traffic bylaw to require all e-scooter riders under the age of 16 and strongly encourage all riders to wear a CSA-approved helmet, and that the town develop an awareness campaign to promote safe riding practices. So that was the first first topic that they had brought forward. The second one was that council amend the traffic bylaw to include a minimum age requirement of 16 years old for operating e-scooters on town roads, pathways, and trails. And I actually had a discussion with Primary Care Alberta about it, and they recommend that they actually move that to 18-year-olds, but the youth said, nope, 16 was old enough. And the third recommendation was that council direct administration to identify design and designated pet-friendly areas along Lakeshore, including options for waste bag stations, signage, and potential off-leash zones, and return to council with cost, benefits, and community feedback. And then the fourth motion or debate that they would like to see would be that council amend the community standards bylaw to increase fines for littering from $500 to $750 for the first offense, $750 to $1,000 for the second offense, and $1,000 to $1,500 for a third offense, and explore complementary initiatives such as public education, more waste recycling bins, and a community cleanup program. So those are the things they would like to see debated at a mock council. We have given council a couple different options, but our recommendation is that administration respectively recommends that council make a motion to accept the mock council topics as information to be used at the discretion of the mock council committee.
Excellent. I think the topics are great. Yeah.
Was there any preference to any of these or any extra chatter or discussion on one versus the other? Just curious if there was a leaning from the youth.
For sure. There was lots of chat around e-scooters. I would say that probably was one that they talked about the most, was around the age requirement for e-scooters specifically. And then I think the other one that had a little bit was around littering. They really, this group definitely had a lot of passion around environmental responsibility. They felt that those fines were too low and that we should raise.
Any other thoughts? Yeah, I'm very surprised by the depth of the topics. I know with grade 9s that I work with every year in the social studies class, it's usually not to that standard. So I'm very impressed. As you were just talking right then, I started thinking, I wish there was a way to make these more public than the mock council. You know, I wish there was a way we could put these online, because I think some of these conversations are conversations that the rest of the community is having. So I think it'd be a very cool idea to be able to put these online when we do them. It's a little bit of a logistic issue, but you know, one that we could explore. Do you have something else?
I do. When it comes to making it more public, I'll say when I was at the Library for Family Literacy Day, we talked about some other ways we could work together. And they had brought up the idea of potentially we could do, offer community mock council type things for especially youth. And I said, oh, we already have a program for that. We could easily adapt that and make that something that's offered, because they tend to get a great turnout when it's things relating to governance, especially for youth. So I think that'd be a really cool path once we've edited this to go down. And I will say first, great job. You guys did a great job. I so appreciate that we had the opportunity to connect around this and give a little bit of feedback, and what you came back with is exactly what my hope was when I made that notice of motion. My hope from council is a little bit of discussion and really to pick up a primary topic for us to start with and give some direction. And then my thought is that would then be sent back to administration, and I will work with likely Callie to edit and update the script, removing runner ducks and replacing it with this. But then we have this, we can remove any we don't like from the list, but then we have this list to work with if down the road we need to swap out another topic. But really primarily we're looking for one for this next version. So, and I'd say I'd go with the youth preference. I think that's a neat one to start with.
Councillor Stindy?
Yeah, I was originally thinking the motion that we might pass would be stronger than as worded, as recommended to us to pass, just to actually say we're going to adopt one. But after a 30-second conversation with Mayor Hansen, the idea of choosing one And personally, I had a bias to number 3 and 4, but it's interesting to hear the kids talking a lot about the e-scooters and number 4. So my bias from beforehand and with the kids' discussion, I'd lean towards number 4, the litter bylaw but persuadable. But I do like the preference of choosing one of the 2 areas that the kids, because that's who our audience is ultimately. And I can see those working well then.
Councilor Mearns?
Yeah, I like number 1, and it's interesting that we're having that conversation later today about e-scooters. So it's something that's top of mind, I think, for a lot of people, including the youth. So I would be happy with number 1.
To be honest, I'm sad we're doing just 1, because I think there's 2 on here that are not just youth focused, but community focused, that I think are very. It's very telling that the youth are focused here. I very much like number 1, but I also very much like number 4. So I think both of those are extremely important topics. That if we have the ability to be flexible and going back and forth with our mock councils, I wouldn't mind focusing on at least a couple of these. Not to say that the others are not also very important, but 1 and 4 for me, so.
If I could ask, I think taking 2 back would be reasonable too, but if we could have a preference on the first one to start, because we probably want to edit this script annually, so I think we could queue one up for the immediate and then have the next one. We can't talk about more than the couple total because we only get them for 2 hours, and that includes a tour of the building. So,
well, if I have to choose, I would probably choose 4, because I do think that 1 is going to be part of conversations we're going to have in not mock councils. So I would probably choose 4. Holly?
So identifying community safety and environmental responsibility, did they have a lean towards which one they felt more pressing to be addressing?
I would say the community safety was an overlying theme, probably the topic that came up the most.
Okay.
But environmental responsibility was pretty high up there too, definitely number 2. Yeah.
Okay, so then knowing that, I'd lean towards number 4 then?
Joe?
I'd lean towards the bikes still and the helmets. I think that's something that's a little bit more topical to youth. I appreciate the fines for littering and everything like that. I think that's important, but I don't think it's quite as tangible for them. I don't think it would result in as much of a meaningful discussion.
Cool. Teach?
Yeah, I kind of like number 3, to be honest. It's something that I heard a lot during the campaign from people, with kind of confusion around our rules at the beach that we have with the dogs right now as is. I think that affects a lot of people. The helmet thing is like, so I grew up in a town where we had that bylaw, and none of the kids followed it, and it's just extra stuff for our bylaw officers to do that, and I think that we've been clear what we want them to do. I don't know if that helps anything or not, but maybe, but I would say that number 3 would be my number 1 choice at this time.
So, just for clarity's sakes, how many of us went with number 1?
I'm willing to switch to a number 1, actually. Oh, yeah.
Hang on, let's just
Straw
figure
vote.
I just want to get a straw vote first, then we can debate. So we had 3 number 1s, we had 3 number 4s, and a number 3. No, what was yours, Tim? You were a number 1 as well? So 4 number 1s?
I lean to a 1.
Yeah? You were leaning to a 1. Okay, so 4 number 1s.
Or given that I think we're not having discussions on bikes
Yeah.
and scooters later, so it's like.
I'm in the same house as Holly. Okay, so let's go into debate. What's the thought then?
I'll state my case for number 1 over number 4. I actually like that it's something currently on the agenda. It makes it relevant to talk about, and I think there'll be a lot of changes in the next handful of years with the Provincial Traffic Safety Act, so it will make that relevant. And the reason I like it slightly more than number 4 is because my idea of a good mock council debate item is one that half of the class will debate one way and half will debate the other way. And when it comes to increasing fines for littering, I could see that being a unanimous decision because it's, yeah, like, it's hard to argue against that. Whereas I do think that youth could come up with a really good pro and a really good con argument around helmets, because there's the factor in, like, would people actually wear that? And yes, this might be a good idea in theory, but I think some really good conversation could be had. It's not necessarily, these items aren't, yeah, we're looking for that debate. That's part of the learning experience. So I think that would be easier. And I'll say, if there's one I don't love the most, it really is number 3, only because we've done some exploration, and I like it too, and I think it would breed good discussion, but we've done some exploration in this, and we know we don't have the current land to do it. So I'd hate for them to debate something that actually isn't a possibility directly on our lakefront unless we annexed some additional, like, it's not something that could realistically be done in today's times. And I'd hate for them to go home and have false hope and have this be a new debate come up when ultimately the study that we did showed on our lake shore as of current, we don't have the space to do this in a safe and proper manner. So I'm not super keen on that one, but
Okay.
that's my thoughts.
Other thoughts? Joe?
And unless I'm mistaken, which in fairness I very likely might be, I don't think helmets are a requirement even for regular bicycles under our traffic safety bylaw. Yeah. Yeah, so it might just be an interesting discussion just in that in general. I know it's if you limit it to e-bikes, but I think it could go off in an interesting tangent for them.
Okay, well, it seems to me that we have our leading candidate in number 1. But, you know, I feel very strongly that we need to keep this list close by because I do think there's a couple of others that are very strong as well. You guys did a really great job in putting this together. I appreciate it. Okay, moving on to the next piece. We have the Laker feedback survey.
Well, good afternoon. I think everybody has had the pleasure of meeting the other Jared in comms, but if you haven't, this is Jared Winder, also another Jared W. So over the last several months, there's been a little bit of confusion in communications, but very happy to have Jared on this team. He brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise, and so he is joining me as he's had his hands on this process as well. So what we want to do today is just kind of update council on the results of the survey. Everybody has that in the report. My goal is not to go through every question line by line. I think we'd be here very late into tomorrow, but just to go over some of the highlights and the insights that we did see from this survey, and then to see which direction we want to take moving forward with regard to this information and potentially future surveys. So just a little bit of background, because half of our members were not part of the last conversation. So back in June, at this very meeting, we had a discussion about direction we wanted to take surveys as we put them out to the public. And so we had an annual survey that we've been doing the last couple of years. It was primarily focused on budget specifically, so very specific to budget questions in relation to tax increases, preferred tax strategies, things of that nature. And that in itself was a shift from how we had done it previously. Dating back to 2013, council would direct administration to work with a third party, and so they would conduct a citizen satisfaction survey, and this took place once per term. So 2013, 15, and 18. In 2021, we were in the throngs of COVID. There were a lot of let's say, outside influences that administration didn't feel would be the right environment for a survey at that time. We were also at a point where we were being very, very tight with all finances and expenditures. So it was decided at that time we would not contract that out. But we did want to do something, so we did move forward with more of an internal survey, which is where we got to today. So that's a long way of saying back in June, we recognized that the survey results that we were getting back weren't really actionable in the sense that this survey has always been designed to be a tool for council around budget time. And the questions that we were asking were not providing enough data for council to lead with any kind of decision making, because it was very, very specifically, as I mentioned, tied to budget. And so in a scenario where, you know, if we were hearing from residents that they wanted an extreme tax increase, which obviously wasn't the case, but council wasn't prepared to move in that direction, then we're putting council in a situation where they're directly going against the wishes and the feedback of the public, and vice versa. If residents wanted an extreme tax cut, for an example, but council was not able or prepared to move in that direction, they're knowingly going against the feedback of residents. So we didn't feel, as it was outlined, that it was beneficial to council. So we wanted to change it up. We wanted to kind of revisit what we had done in the past. So we moved more to a citizen satisfaction general feedback survey. And the data we were hoping to get from that was to be a little bit more broad in nature, to maybe direct us in more of a broad direction where the feedback would allow for a variety of suggestions, opportunities, things of that nature that we could probably be more actionable and more useful to both council and administration. So that's kind of the background behind how we got to where we got. We are happy to say that we received 584 responses during this survey time. That is a stark increase from the previous 2 years and is more than the last 3 or 4 years combined. So whether it was timing, whether it was a survey, but things moved in a really good direction in terms of getting response and feedback from the public. And so, so we were really happy with that, and we'll get into some of the details and the insights here, but just want to reiterate that the importance of surveying the public. If we, and I mentioned it to the previous council, the whole idea to survey and get feedback from the public is to get a sense of how they're feeling and what their insights are. And if we are going to ask for public feedback, then we need to be prepared to do something with that feedback. If we're not prepared to do something with that feedback, that's okay, but we have to be very transparent about why or why not. So as we go through this process, just keep that in the back of your minds as well. So today, we're just looking to share some of the results and this information. Council can just simply accept the results as information. Council can review the results, and based on some of these insights, direct administration through the CAO for maybe some additional things that we should be looking for at budget time. There is a correlation that we'll get to with that. Or it could be something that council considers, maybe not necessarily for this budget cycle, but maybe as operational items as we move forward throughout the year. And then ultimately, what do we want to do moving forward with surveys? If it's a once per council session, once per term, sorry, excuse me, or if it is something we want to do annually just to kind of keep tabs on things. So, any questions before we get into the data? Okay. So for clarity, we started this survey, we launched it in September, and we took it till January, so over the course of several months. If you've read through some of the data and the comments, they're very focused on Lakeshore and enforcement, and a lot of that stems from the timing of the survey as well. It was right after summer, and I think part of the reason why we saw the amount of responses we did get is because we were right before an election too. So people were naturally engaged with what's happening with the town. And so I do think we saw that to our advantage in terms of getting feedback from the public. So there's quite a few comments in here that are probably relate a lot to that timeline, but some of the insights we did see, just going through them, Lakeshore management being the main concern, I think, and then we have bylaw and rule enforcement was another one. Now, these were addressed just a couple of weeks ago at the January 20th meeting, a plan directly related to that. So a lot of the comments and some of the feedback we're seeing is in relation to something that administration has presented to council that you're already considering moving forward. So we're already moving in the right direction based off some of this feedback that we're seeing here. As we go through some of these questions, so we tried to target most of our departments, and we're asking very general questions. And the reason for that is we're trying to get a general sense of how people are feeling, what their satisfaction levels are, and maybe some of their knowledge base around some of the services and programs that the town offers. We can't get into too much detail, which is both a positive and a negative. The positive being is that we want to keep it general, so we have a general sense of getting a temperature of things. The negative is that you don't have the opportunity through this survey to really get into the details and the weeds of how and why we do. We could certainly do that, but then this survey goes from this to this. And you're probably not getting a lot, you're not getting 587 responses if you have too long of a survey, because people's time is valuable, and especially if they're doing something online, you don't want something too long where people are backing out halfway through. So it is more general in nature. Now, as we see through some of these results, through some of these departments and some of the services, some of the results show there's this big blue bar where folks don't know or they don't have an opinion. And so that might be related to a couple of different things. One, it's an opportunity for us to educate the public and Lakers on what some of these services and programs are. But it also could be simply that people don't know or don't have an opinion because they don't utilize these programs or services. And I just wanted to bring that up because we look at wellness and community connection services here, and there is a lot of blue, right? And so I guess I kind of look at it from my perspective. If folks aren't in a situation or a scenario where they're not in need of these services, they might not know anything about that. The same holds true for some of our recreation programs, but also for planning and development. So if I don't need development support or business permitting right now, that's probably something I don't know anything about or don't have an opinion on. So there are areas where we can look into to see if it's a public awareness thing, or if it's just simply chalked up to people don't utilize the programs and services, so they don't have an opinion to offer, and that's okay too. For the most part, I think it's fair to say that there is a general satisfaction level with most of the services that the town is providing through our departments and through administration and the direction that the town is moving right now. More specifics in the raw data which we provided at the end of the survey as well. When we look at where residents are getting their information, our town website is number one, which is what we're happy to see because that is our truest source of information. Obviously, social media is a close second just because that is where people like to live and socialize. So that's why it's so important to us as administration to make sure that anything that we're posting on social media does link back to our website, because that is our one true source of information for all town information. And then word of mouth. So that is important as well, because we want to make sure that if people are speaking amongst themselves, that they are armed with the right and accurate information. So between the website, social media, and word of mouth, that's probably exactly where I expected it to be. Interesting one for me was preferred, well, not really interesting, but preferred town communication channels. People want to be talked to on social media. That's where they want to get their information. So, which is okay for us as an organization. We are going through a social media review right now to make sure that we are where we need to be and where Lakers want us to be, but making sure that we're sharing the right information where people can get access to it and make sure that it is accurate and up to date. Some feedback here on the community guide, pretty standard in terms of how people use it, why they use it. No surprises there. That's exactly where I thought it would be. We're looking at some areas of engagement with our Engage platform. There's some opportunities in there as well. One highlight that, just for consideration for council's information, very split on how the town uses input from residents in decision-making about projects. So there might be some opportunity there for some engagement or even education on how that process works. Contact frequency with the town, how and why people are contacting the town, if they've had their issues resolved, and their satisfaction level with what they're receiving from the town. This question is a little it's tough to gauge because, you know, we have 2/3 of folks are satisfied with their contact with the town. 27% are dissatisfied, but we don't know if that's because their issue wasn't resolved or if they may have had a great experience, but their issue was not resolved, and so it's maybe on the lesser side of things. So that might be a question that I would maybe reword differently. The top 3 insights, this is near the end of the survey, what's the most important issue that should receive the most attention from council. And 2 of these for sure are, again, topics that have been addressed not that long ago that we're already in the process of looking into. Number 1 was residents worry about the impacts of tourism and lakeshore crowds, becoming overcrowded, messy, people not respecting the town. So as Director Lepsak presented not that long ago, there is a plan in place that we will continue to review as we move forward, especially into the budget process. We talked about bylaw enforcement and police presence. That's also part of that conversation. And then a topic that I think is pretty prevalent at every year, around every budget cycle. People are concerned about infrastructure, taxes, and town growth. Just want to make sure that we are sustainable and we can be sustainable for times to come. This was an optional question. Of the 587, 472 took the time to respond to that. So that is something that for council members, if you wanted to dig into the raw data to see exactly what people are saying, question 23 might be a place to dive into. And then there's just an additional question about what folks want us to know. And again, talks about just prioritizing residents here in Sylvan Lake, water quality and infrastructure, which I know has been a topic for council administration over the last couple of budget cycles. And then a strong call for communication and transparency. Residents want honest, plain language updates from the town, which is music to my ears. I love plain language, making sure people can understand exactly what we're trying to tell them. And they just want better understanding of how taxes are spent and how construction projects are managed. And so we've already had a conversation about, as we enter the budget marketing cycle, about more enhanced communication to residents about how the budget process works, where their tax dollars go, how they're spent, how that process works. So I think there's just a desire here for just more information from the town so people know exactly what's going on and they can ask the right questions of both administration and council. So that is like a very large, broad snapshot of this survey. And again, we included all of the raw data in there with all of the comments for all of the questions, all of the graphs. We just tried to clean it up, make it easier to read on the front end of things. So the next question, I guess, moving forward is exactly that. Is this a process that council would like to see continued on an annual basis? Is this something that we want to do more on a council term process, where we see results at the beginning and the results near the end of term to see how things stack up? And there is also an opportunity, if a council so desires, as part of the budget process, to contract this out to a third party once again. One of the biggest pros of doing something in-house is that it is part of our general operation. It's just what we do, right? So it is one of our projects for over the course of the year. We don't have the ability to be calling households directly and ensuring that we have, you know, a very diverse group of household incomes or age demographics or living scenarios, right? So ours are all done online. So we're not getting that spread out, whereas a third-party company, like that's what they do. They don't stop until they have their exact spread that they want. So there is an advantage to that, but it does come at a pretty hefty cost. So something for council to consider as we move forward. And again, if this is the direction we want to go, if we want to change the questions, how they're asked, format, this is a tool for council. So we are here to help you any chance we can. Excuse me.
Any questions for Waldo to begin? We've got a lot of things that we want to discuss at some point, but any questions for clarity to begin? Yeah.
Just on the essay final question, there's a few that I noticed that are kind of like, for lack of a better term, it seems like they might be redacted. Is there a reason why that's the case?
Yeah, so we made sure to redact all of our screen names for starters. That's why you'll see in the raw data it says screen name and redacted. We just didn't want anything that could be potentially identifiable to an individual. Some of that was redacted because there were the use of first or last names in the comments, and we didn't want anybody to be identified. And then there were some comments that were, for lack of a better term, racist, that we just didn't feel lended anything to the comment. So it was hateful in nature, and so I took it upon myself to make sure that that wasn't reflected in the comments.
Any other specific pieces that you'd like to address then? Nothing. Waldo?
Just to clarify process, there's topics I want to pop up, and then also to answer Mr. Waldo's question. That's next, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't want you to say, the next topic, thank you, Mr. Waldo.
No, just going through the process, making sure that we cover the high to the specific. I'm just gonna start by saying that these have always been a big eye opener for me, because there's pieces of these every year that change a little bit, and sometimes it's in areas that I don't really think about, areas that don't really have a huge concern for me, because I'm so used to seeing these things day by day. But then when you see, particularly, the thing that stands out to me is how many of these are blue, how many of these are things that people just don't have opinions about. That I think that's unfortunate, because it means that people either don't care or they're not informed enough. So it's one piece or the other. So when I look through these, I think, you know, some of the things, some of the areas, the questions that are dominantly blue are areas that really concern people, that concern programs and being involved with people. So I like having this because it really does give a direction. So thank you for laying it out the way you did so visually. It was very good. Okay, so next pieces then is if you have questions of concern. Tej, you look confused in your...
That was a weird way to put that. Stop me if this isn't the right time to say what I want to say about this. I don't know if it's concern, but I think it's important, a couple things that you said, that people want to get their information from social media. I feel slightly vindicated because I've been screaming that from the rooftops for a while now, and I think people, I think people are reluctant to have that be the case, and I get that, because sometimes social media sucks, but it is a reality of the world that we live in, and for example, I posted a simple question on my town council Facebook page yesterday, and it was just, barbecues at the beach, should we ban them completely? Should we have them in certain areas? What are your thoughts? That got 103 comments from people that have opinions on barbecues. Someone took that question, put it on Sylvan Lake Rant and Rave, and I'm looking at it right now, and turned it into a poll. And that poll has 738 votes and 81 comments on a barbecue question. By the way, 32% say ban them completely, 57% say keep them in certain areas, but only propane, not coal. So, and you know, for me, like I post videos on TikTok and do other certain things to try to be engaged, and those get thousands of views. My Facebook videos average 5,000 to 7,000 views. One got 50,000 views. Like it's a really important piece of what we're doing, and I think this is important as well. But I really just want to encourage all of us around this table to embrace it, because it's what I've been told, it's what I see in my feedback. People are honestly, we're living in this world of instant gratification. People don't want to look too deep into things. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm glad you pointed it out, because I do think whether we like it or not, that's where we're at today. That's where people want to get their information. So I would just encourage all of us here to kind of get on that train and get going with that.
Councillor Stindy?
Thank you. Thinking on that social media too, I'll speak to that and then throw some other topics out. I think we do have to recognize people are watching their social media more than our website. But as we, use social media to promote certain ideas or new programs or new bylaw or whatever it is, I think we always need, and the survey kind of showed it too, is we have to keep that repository of information on a website so that, we are highlighting our website or highlighting information or surveys, and they can go to that website to find it. As we all know, sometimes you see something and then 2 minutes later you can't find it again because the algorithm is blocking you in effect. But yes, I agree we need to use social media absolutely, and it's a place that people are at. And then holding that website as the kind of like the library of the information and topics. I was thinking about the survey to answer one of Mr. Waldo's questions too, is like the survey does have the flavor of the election in it. You can tell that the election happened during it when you read the comments. It very much brought me back, kind of these flashback moments of the topics of the election, not just the topics before the election or after the election, because the conversation around town changes. But I think that's good. I think that the survey was done at that time. And I really like ask, and the question specifically about, how do we do surveys in the future? We'll see the money, and we did have that debate in the last council time about, do we go to an outsource or internal? I'm glad we did what we did. I think we got a lot of feedback, but I understand the weakness of it too, as Mr. Waldo pointed out. I like the idea of having survey following the terms of council, like having this big one at the beginning, really powerful for a new council. And I think some of these questions and highlights that we're finding can now gauge next year's survey, or maybe there's some mini surveys that we do on certain themes. I can see how a lot of these topics are already, as said, are going to inform our debates in budget. And I can even see a bit of it coming up in strategic planning. So I think the timing of this one is really powerful for us as a new team. Not sure how far to go because I got a lot of topics I would like to highlight that didn't come out totally in theme, but I can save it for a few minutes.
Let's see. What I'd like to do is go back to the question that Waldo posed about frequency and whether or not we want to do this as a regular basis, or what our ideas are around that. If we can talk about that for a second. Frequency of the survey and who we want doing the survey, I guess, are the two things that I'd like to discuss.
I think once at the start and once at the end of a term, or I guess probably once at the start, once at year 3 is really, because then it still gives you one more budget shot to do that. I think annually is too soon to make the impacts, because if we get the information, we can't deal with it till budget. Really, although budget is approved in March, the spending doesn't start till a couple months later. Well, you've already started the survey before you've really been able to access any of those funds that we've now approved. So I think a little bit more stretch out. I'm completely comfortable with out of house, although I am wondering what capacity would look like to add just one focus group session on these exact questions with one hand-picked group. Have WCC pick 3 people, have planning pick 3 people, have just to ensure that we get that really diverse community assortment. I think we would learn so much from getting a few people once per term around the table to ask these exact same questions, or maybe take the feedback from this and hash around a couple things a little further when we're not sure what was meant. But just, yeah, to me, ensuring that we hear the voices of those who wouldn't necessarily fill this out online, I think would be important. But I know that is verging on when you would hire a consultant is really when you start to do those in-person types of engagements. So I'm not sure what capacity looks like.
Councilor Mearns?
Yeah, I'm fine with, beginning of the term. I would say even go middle, gauge where we've been, and what we can do to complete a term out. So I'd be fine with halfway through. I'm supportive of doing it in-house for sure. But I had never thought about the focus group side of things, and I don't know if that's possible or not, but I love the ability that we can do it in-house, and the results were phenomenal. So love to see where we can get in a couple of years from now, or 3 years, whatever it may be, but yeah, I'm satisfied with that.
Councillor Iwanicki?
Just on the topic of frequency, if it's all right with the chair, if I just ask a targeted question on it? Just because I think, I mean, surveys like this, or surveys in general, are pretty meaningless if the data isn't controlled in some way, shape, or form. So what kind of controls do we have? Because I remember filling this out, but it was in September, I think it was, so I don't really remember the process. What controls do we have in place to ensure that it's residents that are filling this out, or that we're getting the data that we really want out of it?
So through the chair and Councillor Iwanicki, great question. So through our Engage platform, everybody must register with a Town of Sylvan Lake address, which is great. It does actually deter a lot of anonymous just fill outs of surveys. In saying that, unless we're doing very specific IP tracking to make sure that this is coming from a Sylvan Lake home, it's tough to ensure 100% that it is a Sylvan Lake resident. If I were to go through, not that I would, you know, you can see who's registered where. And so, but then even then, that's a process to go through and track every single, so it's a good system if it's working the way it's supposed to, but at the end of the day, there is that trust process with residents to make sure that those that are filling it out and that are registered are following the guidelines that they agree to when they sign up.
But you have no reason to believe that anyone would be abusing it in any event?
No, and each user can only fill it out once anyways, so we're not having there's no ability to keep doing it. So it's a one and done scenario. I have no reason to believe that anybody is abusing this or there's a lot of outside influence. I think Sylvan Lakers care about Sylvan Lake. I don't think anybody else does.
Yeah. Okay, so on the topic of the discussion then, I really truly like this process. I like being able to see the data. I like, as Councillor Payne pointed out, the blue bars. Like you just look at it and you're like, you can tell pretty quickly what people care about. You know, the bylaw and the beach management being the only ones that are even close as far as the people who don't know, are the things that everyone deal with, like garbage, you know, like garbage collection. Like everyone knows what that is. And so I'd like to see this kind of how we've done it is at the start of the term. I think doing it during the election maybe isn't the best process. It's helpful because you can get the data quickly to the new term for council, but at the same time, like skimming through it, it did have a bit of a coloring of it, of the information. So I'd like to see it at the start and kind of near the end of the term too, so that the council coming in can see, you know, a year before, 6 months before the election, what people care about, and then kind of a refresher, pretty short when they're going into strategic planning. That'd be my thoughts there.
The only difficulty with doing it at the start and at the end of a term is it's the same time.
It's close.
So, you know, the start of one term is the end of another. I think at the start of a term and at the midway point, to me, makes the most sense. It allows you that time. 2 years is a long time to implement some change. So I think the frequency. Having read these from the past, having read these from times when we've done outside companies to do this, and reading this one, I actually think you guys did a better job. Like I think it feels more personal. So I'm very much in favor of keeping it in-house. Any other thoughts? Holly?
I thought the timing of it was perfect because it captured, we started the survey in September. So it captured election time, it captured after. So it's, we want to hear and we want people to reflect their thoughts about what the huge topics are during the election. But then we want to, I don't think doing it every year is economical. In 2 years from now, when we're not in an election, but we are at a time when we have had, as a council, an opportunity to address some of the things that need to change when we have time to work with the budgets to make the changes we need to do, then we need to see where you know, what people are feeling at that point. So I kind of like now and 2 years from now, how that reflects going forward. I just think for now, and that, my opinion on in-house, out-of-house, I think that is dependent on how we see things go with taking the information we have, making the decisions with budget, seeing how many of these things we can influence, and then what the reaction is after that. Because we can say, we can do another survey like this, but if we're seeing that people are happy, I don't know. So I'm a little undecided as to whether it stays in-house or out-of-house too, because there is a way to get good information if it's not in-house, but I do worry about the cost of that too. So I did like the questions. There were a lot of, there's feedback that, you know, you would like to have the questions asked slightly different, but for the most part, I like seeing the data, like just the data. And the blue bars were crazy for me. I take it two ways, that it's not that people aren't interested, it just doesn't apply to them, for the most part. Yeah, frequency for me would be maybe 2 years from now.
I agree with the biannual. You have a question?
Very roughly, do you recall the cost when we debated this about going out of house? And it would obviously change from time to time, but...
Yeah, through the chair to Mayor Hansen. I believe the last handful of external surveys were in the range of 25 to 30,000. So anticipate in the years that have followed that cost is probably much higher. But, yeah.
The number that came to mind for me was 50, but I thought it was more like 50,000, but that was a few years ago. Councillor Stindy?
I was just going to say, repeating the idea of the sort of beginning and mid-term for a survey that's more in depth, but I still speak in favor of having, I'll call it the mini one that we have connected to budget feedback in the other years, so that there's always a year that people always have an opportunity to give us some feedback specific to that year and that budget. So I think that's been helpful as well.
Okay, so in regards to frequency and regards to in-house, out-of-house, would you like us to be more clear, Jared's?
I mean, I think right now, this can obviously, this will be part of the budget process. So as we get into presentations and deliberations, it could be an item that council defers for now if they decide we're not quite there to make a decision on this because we have our survey for now. It could be an item that is even deferred to 2027 for discussion. But then it just comes back to, I think you have to make a decision on your frequency before you can even get to that point. So if this is an item that you want to keep in-house, we're happy to do it. And we can tweak it and we can make any changes that council wishes to it, whether it's annually, biannually, once, twice, however you want. But in terms of direction, I don't think we need a direction today. But certainly I think conversation prior to budget presentation, or deliberations anyways.
Perfect. Okay, what would we like to move on to next with this? Because there's a lot to unpack.
Well, mine's around next steps. Do you want that now or later?
No, let's hang on for next steps. I know Councillor Stindy had some detail that you wanted to explore.
Yeah, I just want to note some themes that I was picking up aside from the bigger, broader themes, and some maybe jewels in it or surprises. One of them was like dissatisfaction with streets. You know, it was fairly high, and I was a little surprised by that. And I thought snow would be the number one, but maybe it's the time of year survey. It wasn't, you know, full winter all the time. And that's a theme we have to watch around surveys too, is each season has its own complaints. But potholes, 50% dissatisfied, and we spend over $300,000 a year fixing potholes. And And my car hasn't been swallowed by a pothole yet, but I thought snow would be a bigger one, but snow was a theme too. There's a lot of communication ones in the big theme, but there was in the, a couple other themes that popped up that were weird, like the word weeds. Being a parks guy, I noticed that. Weeds, not just at the high-profile garden beds of the lakefront, but in other areas of town. Just reflecting on maintenance of our parks is really what they were saying when they talked about weeds. Animal control came up a number of times. And not just dogs, that was definitely a theme, but cats. And I know coming home to my house, it used to make me very angry to move through the fog of cat poop smell. It's just so disgusting, it isn't funny. And I like cats. I'm not a cat hater. But just thinking like that, it was a theme that surprisingly came up multiple times about cats. And thinking about these pets from knocking on doors, and my own friends and ourselves, we have a pet too. Half our town owns a pet. And I thought communication around pet rules, pet expectations could be a great theme to go through our utility bill. Like it literally means something to half the people for sure, plus those who might be complaining about it. So I thought that's a great communication theme to pick up on. Another one was organics all winter. That surprised me, being, you know, as everybody knows, I'm that little, it's a theme that runs in my psyche all the time about the environment. I was surprised how often that popped up. Another one that was lower was lake water quality as opposed to just drinking water quality. I think I only saw it twice. But when I talked to people as a politician and I ran on a theme of healthy lake, people always nod yes to me. Nobody wants that lake water to be endangered. And yet it only came up once or twice on all of those hundreds of surveys. So that caught me by surprise as an anti-example. New library was a theme that came up a lot. Water shortage is another example of miscommunication or misunderstanding. We do not have a water shortage in our town, but we're triggered by seeing all this growth, and especially 2 summers ago when we had water restrictions, which was mostly related to infrastructure broken down, which was repaired. So people don't know that story, and that tells us that, you know, there's an area we have to communicate better. Because we do not have a water shortage. We have water for thousands. Now, however, if we continue to grow, of course we're going to outrun any of our infrastructure, which is kind of what's happened at the lakefront around garbage. When we keep growing in visitors and we don't build up our staff and collect money from parking, of course things become a problem. So those are communications, I thought. Kids at night, youth at night was a theme. And that tied in with bylaw and policing and stuff like that. But it also, in a more positive way, talking about parenting programs, senior, youth, like all these different age levels, and it reminded me of Carcross Tagish First Nation and the Yukon. They had a lens on their budgeting that we could think about and not make a formal process, but they had a formal process. When they budget, they say what percentage is going to the youngest, which percentage is going to youth, adults, and elders. And they looked at the 4 stages of life and said, our budgets have to reflect that. And so we could do that in our own budgeting, be conscious of, do we really have enough youth programs? Do we really have enough? And then they had another matrix across all age groups looking at the needs of people, food, housing, recreation, etc. They had this other matrix. They had a 3-dimensional matrix that they did all their budgeting on. And so this, thinking about those comments that people talked about of these different age groups and having programs for them. Another theme I picked up on, although I'll use the example of rope fences along our paths, like, you know, up in Lakeway Landing where I used to live, you know, these rope fences like fall apart. They're just a maintenance pain in the butt for the parks. And, but it wasn't our town that put them in, it was the developer. We inherit a lot of problems from our developers. And as we grow in our town, we now have more parks people to look at the plans of a developer. So we'll be in a better place, but that's a communication, that's part of our story and history, because 20 years ago, those were put in without really thinking about how do you maintain them. And then very few other comments. I think I've hit them all because I've circled the things and they keep coming back. Oh yeah, the dog park was many comments, because you can see half the town has dogs. They talk a lot about dog parks. Lighting at the dog park, more trees at the dog park. Another weird one that surprised me, too many Airbnbs. I shouldn't say weird one, but just it surprised me that it came up as a specific comment a number of times. And as much as we talk about making sure that our visitor tourism does help pay for any impacts on town, it shows that we have to figure out and communicate to residents and ourselves as councillors as we budget. What is tourism officially costing us? And how do we pay for it? And are we paying for it? There's a perception out there by some of our fellow citizens that we're rampantly wasting money. We're spending millions on those tourists, and they're giving us practically nothing other than a couple bars. And that's literally, I'm quoting the comments, are getting a benefit from it. And I know that not to be true. However, how do we communicate that, and how do we put that story back back in its right form with some true facts to say, we're collecting this much money, this is how much money extra we pay on the lakefront. Because we should never forget, the lakefront will cost us money even if we got rid of every visitor to this town. Because it's still one of our parks, and it's something I as a resident want to be on. So one of those counterexamples was, don't nickel and dime the tourists as a counterexample. And the pool, apparently it's too cold. That's a comment I saw many times, I'm not talking once. And then the last one I'll throw out there is noise. Whether it was bars and the residents nearby, vehicles anywhere in town, noise was an irritant by many of our residents in many comments. And it's not a theme to put in the big report, but it's one I noted. So there, I flew by a whole bunch. We could debate any one of them, but I just want to throw them out as themes to think about for budget and potential communications and future surveys even.
Thank you for your diligence. I always enjoy it. Joe?
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback off what Councillor Stindy was saying. There's a couple things in there that surprised me, a couple things that didn't, honestly, but one of the ones, what I was kind of saying a little bit before is about the bylaw enforcement side. It was a lot closer to 50-50 than I was frankly expecting. I think it was 45-50, right? With the difference being the unsure. And I was like, oh, that's closer than I would have gathered, especially if you look at the parks management side of it, right? The parks management side, I think, is like about 70 against 30 in favor. That's with I think it was 1.2% unsure, which is a pretty low number. So I was interested to see that, but the noise was one that came up a lot that I was pretty surprised by. I heard people talking about it, right, and during the campaign. I've seen it come up online, but the volume of people saying there's just too much noise on the roads, whether that's vehicles, motorcycles, a lot about boats. I saw a few people saying we should ban boats, which I thought was funny. That's something I don't know if we really even can do that much about, practically speaking, but it's something to keep in mind. And then the one that I saw that really, I wouldn't say bothered me because that's too strong, but the one that I was upset by was our poor WCC. The question on that is just a big wall of blue. Basically every single question on that was, I don't know, or doesn't apply to me. I think we could probably do a better job of promoting our WCC because they provide such a valuable service to the community, and trying to shrink those bars, not because ideally we have fewer people or more people needing their services, although I think a lot of people, if they turn their mind to it, could probably find something they could, use and get some value out of, but just so that they knew what they were doing more. I think just food for future thought for us, especially from the communications department with Mr. Waldo, is how can we promote that facility a little bit more. I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Holly?
Probably the biggest thing that struck me going through this and listening to all the feedback was the importance of making sure the residents receive some sort of feedback. Because we are listening, administration is listening. We brought, a couple of weeks ago, administration brought recommendations for changes at the beach. You know, we're actively talking about things we can do because Lakers want change. And there is a diverse list. I have a huge list. I'm like, we've got to talk about, like, I'm not sure how we can get through all of it, but as a minimum, I feel that we need to find a place in the budget and add it into our strat planning to communicate back to the residents. Because some of this, it could be misinformation, some of it is we need to make these changes, but communication is key in a lot of the stuff that we heard, whether it's communicating our actions or maybe it's just communicating how we can educate our residents to do things slightly different so that we can all work together. I just strongly believe we've got to, I guess, and this is gonna be a budget item, to find a way to communicate better, because that's one thing I really think we need to do. And that's social media, that's the website. There is concerns for, I've said it myself, we have 3 or 4 different platforms and we have the website, and why do we have to go to Engage or Visit or, you know, these different websites? It should all be in one place. So, and that's all tied to communication too. So that's important.
Yeah.
That was a great segue to my thoughts about next steps. I think it is very important that we are able to produce a report out of this to get back to our residents. And I'm picking numbers out of the clouds, and I would be very open to changing them. But to me, that's a list of here's what we heard, here's the things we're doing really well, and here's the list of things that 40% of Lakers or 35% or whatever that is said we needed to improve. And under each of those things, because there's not that many that fall into that core category, we should have some bullet point forms of here's what we're doing about it. And some of those are things we've already taken or will be within the next couple of months. We don't have any firm decisions till we get through budget, so it could be listing those. Some of them, the answer might be appreciate the feedback. We will have this considered in next year's budget. But I do think we need to give something back because, yeah, there are some themes and there's a lot of things that we have already heard just in this short amount of time. So that'd be great.
Teach?
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Yeah, so there was a couple things in there. There's obviously a lot of comments, which is great. And actually, Ian mentioned one that I wanted to talk about. And I don't know if Sylvan Lake has ever, or how you would even do a study on what tourism brings financially to our town versus what it hurts. Well, yes, if we had no tourists, we'd still have to maintain the beach. However, we'd have more people who respected the beach as locals and didn't cause all the issues that cost extra money. The comment that someone made about stop nickel and diming our tourists, we literally don't. They come here and it's $3 an hour for parking and $30 a day, which is like the cheapest parking in Canada probably for a place like this. So we don't nickel and dime, and we should $20 bill them. You know, like for me, I just don't. This made me sound like a jerk, but I don't really care. I'm not elected by the tourists who come here. I'm elected by the people of Sylvan Lake. I don't care if people think it's too expensive to park here. that's going to open up space at the beach, and I think that's a win for us. I think we should absolutely find more ways to make money through the people that come here. I think we should put a value on our beach, which makes people value our beach. So I just vehemently disagree that we are even in a situation where we nickel and dime our tourists, because we don't. And then the other thing is, with the major issues that we're seeing, that were brought up in this survey, were the same issues that we saw on social media. And I've been told many times that social media is this silent minority, or loud minority, when clearly it is not. It matches up 100% with what we got in the survey. People want us to be accessible, like as counselors. People are so sick and tired of politicians at the provincial level and try to get a hold of our provincial MLAs or our federal MLAs and see if you get a response that's back from them. We're in a unique position as municipal councillors where we live in our town and people do have access to us, and we should embrace that. When I said during the campaign that I was going to make this my full-time job, it wasn't that I was going to be in chambers 24 hours a day. It was that I was going to be on social media. I am going to engage with people. I am going to respond to comments. I am going to be accessible. And I think all of us as a whole have to do that, because that's what the people want. And when we look at these surveys, when we look at social media, the beach, the cleanup, the bylaw enforcement, charging people more money to come here, that's a slam dunk for us. And I believe that anyone that, obviously we're a long way away now, but if we nail that, if we nail the beach as this council, you are probably going to get reelected almost on that alone if you decide to run again. That is such a slam dunk for us. So there's, back to right at the beginning, to circle back, have we done some sort of study to show people what tourism brings in and what it costs us? Is that even possible? Like, how do you actually do that with certainty? We definitely don't nickel and dime our tourists, and we should probably start doing that, would be my opinion.
Ian?
Thinking about those next steps of once we get out of the budget process and we've made our compromises and know our budget, I think if we can couch our message between budget and this survey, I think that will be very powerful, to say these are some of the things we heard, these are some of the things we were able to solve through our budget, or the progress working towards solving in our budget. So I think that would be a good, powerful parallel message. Mm-hmm. That was one thought I had with feedback.
Tim?
Yeah, I like the idea Mayor Hansen brought up, just about a report about this and the timing of it. Could be post-strategic plan, so that we can highlight some of the things that we heard in the survey, and then strategic planning, and then budget in correlation with that. Because I know in the past, when we've had surveys, we've had budget following that, and been able to identify some key things out of the survey that are budget impacting, but we've heard from the residents. So I think that's a great next step.
Mm-hmm. Joe?
Yeah, and just to follow up with what Councillor Mearns was saying, I think following the strategic plan, once that's kind of rolled out formally, I would love to see something that says almost, it could be even verbatim of the sort of top 5 kind of, summary issues that are raised in the report here, and just say, these are the issues we heard raised from the survey. These are the specific things that we plan on addressing, right? To say, let's stick with bylaw, but, bylaw enforcement, this is what we're doing in response to the concerns, right? 1, 2, 3. It doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be complicated, but when people are saying, hey, I want to be listened to, because that's what almost everybody wants, is just to be heard. You don't necessarily have to do what they're saying, but at least they can feel validated or vindicated that someone is trying to be responsive to those concerns. I would love to see something like that. So an executive summary of the survey, and then, hey, here's our strategic plan, and here's the handful of things we're doing to respond to those. I think that'd be really valuable for everybody.
I think too, even as a young council, we've only been a few months, some of the decisions and intentions and directions that we've given so far are in line with a lot of what the results are here. So I think communication, as Holly pointed out, I think communication that's specific, that details, look, we've heard you, these are some of the things we're going to do. It's not, we've heard you, and that's it. You know, if we can be specific in the education piece of this is how we're going to implement some of the concerns that you've had. So I think that communication piece is huge. I also think that it's, to me, when I read these results and I go through some of these responses, it is telling that it was an election year. You can hear it. You can hear the echo of the messages that we were sending out being given back to us in a lot of these comments. So I would be very interested to see in 2 years what the responses are, and if they are the same, or if they're simply just similar, whatever the case is. So any other thoughts and comments? Good. Mr. Waldo, do you have everything you need from us?
Yes, I do.
Excellent, thank you. I am going to call a recess for 9 minutes. So we'll meet back here at 5:25. Next up on our agenda is the e-bikes discussion. So we are going to hear from Mr. Lebsack.
Thank you, your chair and council. I have, okay, you've got that one, I've got my own. All right, just want to make sure. So we've prepared a little bit of background here just in terms of what we currently do with e-bikes, and then just looking for a little bit of direction for council if we want to make any changes. And sorry. So again, what administration is hoping to receive today from council is in regards to permitting e-bikes, e-scooters, and any miniature vehicles in Sylvan Lake. And based on the feedback from council or direction from council, then we'll know whether we are bringing back our traffic safety bylaw or whether we're leaving it stand as is. So again, a little bit of the background there is that currently under the Provincial Traffic Safety Act, e-bikes and e-scooters are not permitted on any roadway. As per the Town of Sylvan Lake's bylaw, we are silent on it, which means we fall under the Provincial Act's legislation. Currently, we do have, what's the word we wanted to use? We have a contracted service that provides e-bikes, e-scooters within Sylvan Lake. They've received a specific exemption from the province, but then of course, you can buy an e-scooter online at Costco, almost anywhere else you want, which are actually prohibited on streets. So the province has done us a real disfavor of making contracted services allowed, but privately owned ones prohibited. So that's kind of the first thing that we would like to bring to council's attention there on e-bikes. The other one is that, so e-scooters and what we're calling miniature vehicles, kind of, they're hard to identify each one, but we'll kind of lump them together, is that there's a number of items out now that you can order online that do not quite meet the threshold of a scooter, a gas-powered scooter that drives around on the streets, and the province does regulate and have regulations for them, but they're basically as powerful, can go as fast, if not faster. They're electronic, and they're totally unregulated at this point in time. So the Traffic Safety Act is mute or quiet on them, other than the document that we've shown you in here under small vehicle rules, which is a guiding document put out by the province for the Traffic Safety Act, but they're not listed specifically or identified anywhere in the Traffic Safety Act. So what we're just looking for is a little bit of clarification now. We're starting to see them pop up within towns. They're on the trail system, they're on streets. We're getting electric, we'll call them dirt bikes, for lack of a better term right now, but they would basically fall under miniature vehicles in terms of classification. But we have electric dirt bikes in town now. They can go, we're guessing they're going between 70 and 80 kilometers an hour. They're on the streets, they're on the trails. We have what we would call electric bikes or electric scooters, which means they don't even really have pedals on them, which is different from an e-bike that are in town now. And there's also a few little four-wheeled units that are running around town that you can order online and get shipped in, and they're starting to appear in town as well. So we feel that it's not only has council brought this up as a topic of discussion, but we feel it's good timing. We do have our off-highway vehicle bylaw that's currently in effect. We've applied for the golf cart exemption through the province, which would come into effect once the snow is gone. And so we find that this is a good timing for this topic as well, to see what we want to do with our traffic safety bylaw in terms of either restricting, prohibiting, or allowing some of these new items that are showing up on our streets today. So I don't know that I need to go quite through the presentation unless council would like me to, but it's there kind of as a guiding document to direct the conversation and see where we go from here.
Okay, I have a clarification question before we get too far into things, if it's all right, Mr. Lebsack. We don't currently have a bylaw that covers this. However, any bylaw we write needs to align with provincial legislation, is my understanding. Or can we write a bylaw that supersedes provincial legislation?
To the chair, we can write a bylaw that is further restrictive than provincial legislation. We cannot write a bylaw that is less restrictive than provincial legislation.
But we can be more restrictive.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thoughts, Councillor Stindy?
Just on the big picture question and one thought before it. I'm an advocate of diversity in transportation. That doesn't mean I believe electric motorbikes should be on our pathways. In fact, I'm totally opposed to that idea. But another main thrust that I have in my mind is that where the province is silent, I kind of want to remain silent as well. In terms of our own bylaws, what I want to advocate for is that we as a community advocate to the province that they no longer remain silent. And maybe two ways we can do it is as an individual community. We can communicate with our MLA and the relevant minister. And also we have Alberta Munis as an advocacy tool, because we're not the only ones in this province dealing with these issues. And if the province would take on some of the new technologies and give us some broad guidelines, then we could then start fine-tuning for our own community. That's in the big picture, that's kind of where I sit.
Yep.
I just have a technical question too, just to start, Mr. Lebsack. So reading the presentation, correct me if I'm wrong here, because I might be, so e-scooters and these micro vehicles aren't really very clearly, if at all, defined within the Traffic Safety Act, but they are in fact restricted on highways. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay. So no matter what we do without seeking a waiver from the province in the same way we have with the off-highway vehicles and the golf carts, we wouldn't be able to pass anything allowing them on sidewalks, as an example. Is that correct, or am I wrong on that?
No, I believe we would be able to pass our own bylaw that would allow them on trails, sidewalks, and municipal roadways.
Okay. Then I was wrong. That's perfect. Thank you. Because I was like, how are we going to do much of this without that carve out there? Okay.
Want to come back to you?
Yeah, I'll come back to you in a second.
Tim?
Yeah, I think times have definitely changed. I look at some of the other municipalities. I look at Calgary, obviously major city, major roadways, and I look at some of the vehicles that they've allowed, how they've done it, as well as some of the other municipalities. So I think there's an option there for us to pursue this. We're a small enough community. You know, I've heard multiple stories of, you know, summertime, a e-scooter, that's someone's means to get to work, to get groceries, things like that. I think there's real value in that, alternative transportation. What I don't want to see is these high-powered e-bikes that are on the trails, that are on the roads, on the sidewalks, that have a different purpose than strictly transportation around town. So I would love to see administration bring back a bylaw that would help us to be able to prohibit some of these vehicles and their uses. At the same time, provide some enforcement behind it. And I see some of the fines, and I would support that as well. And you know, start with the communication side of things, but I would like to see something back from administration to help support this.
Any other thoughts? Joe, you want to finish yours?
So just like two kind of passing thoughts on this. The one is from the Calgary bylaw perspective. The one thing that I really didn't kind of conceptually enjoy is how they're not allowed on kind of the public roads, but only on trails. I'm just like, well, how do people get their things there 9 times out of 10, right? They usually ride from their house to the trail. Not saying people are going to break it anyway, but that's how they functionally do these things. In town here, I would echo what Councillor Marin said. I wouldn't want to see these e-bikes rolling around on our trails, like that main one through the old gas right away and everything. Some of it's narrowly treed. There's not a lot of space to maneuver, and having things on there would be pretty dangerous. And affordability is such a common theme. I like the idea of someone having an option, because the town is not enormously walkable if you've got to get to work or something. I think of my niece. We live by the dog park. She works at Tim Hortons. Like, her walk's an hour and a half, right? And she can ride her bicycle in the some of the time, but having an electric thing would be probably pretty useful to her and make her job prospects a lot more broad. And then I'm worried about, even if it's not correct, just sort of a perception of the town of hypocrisy, like if we're allowing golf carts on the road, you know, the corporate e-scooters and snowmobiles, it's like, well, what's really the big difference between that and one of these little personal Costco e-scooters? I just don't see a real practical difference, despite the fact I don't want to see a million of them on the road either, but I do think we need to have some sort of bylaw guidance on it. What that looks like, I'm open to suggestions.
I have never hidden the fact that I think that golf carts, e-scooters, these things are ridiculous. I think they're unsafe. And we in our community have had major accidents because of the use and abuse of these things, like where people have been irreparably harmed. I don't like them. I don't like that they're unsafe. I don't like that people are irresponsible. And you know, my feeling is I don't like them. I don't want them. But with that being said, I think Tim's right. I think it is a changing world. I think rather than get out and jump in your truck and drive to Tim Hortons, you know, you do see a lot more people, especially on the trails going east and west. You see a lot more people on the e-scooters when you're walking. If I'm walking with my family through the trails, we walk quite frequently from Fox Run, where I live, all the way over to the Our Lady of the Rosary area. We probably, it's not an exaggeration to say we have 10 scooters pass us going both ways. So it already exists in our community. It's already there, and it's already very popular. We've had the rental scooters in our community now for a few years, and even though the complaints have died down significantly, the use is still very much there. I would like to see regulation that's actually enforceable. Like, not just having a bylaw and having the regulation and having these possibilities, but us actually doing something about it. I drive to work every morning down 47th, down Railway Ave, down 47th. There's a lady who rides one of these e-bikes who passes me in my truck. I do 40, probably do 45 coming down 47th, and she passes me on her e-bike. So this 37-kilometer-an-hour thing, no, I guarantee that's not real. So if they're going to be there, if e-scooters are going to be out there on a regular basis, if these e-bikes are, we need to do something to curb the lack of safety. And but to echo what Councillor Johannesson has said in the past, and Councillor Iwanicki both, if we're going to have a bylaw, we have to enforce the bylaw. So whatever we do put together, whatever we do present, needs to be something that we're willing to stand behind and say, yes, this is what we're going to do. Because having a bylaw, going through the hassle of creating one, going through the hassle of having this, having a bylaw and never actually using it, it's a giant waste of time. So I'm all for putting something together. I do like what a couple of the other regulations a couple of the other communities have put together. So I think there's enough out there for us to be able to beg, borrow, and steal, and then take it and make it Sylvan Lake as well. So I'm in favor of putting something together. Teach?
Yeah, I agree pretty much fully with Councillor Payne. It's hard for me to, I get the transportation thing. Personally, I haven't met or seen anyone. It doesn't mean they don't exist, of course. I just haven't personally seen or met anyone or heard from anyone that is like, yeah, if I didn't have an e-scooter, I wouldn't be able to get my groceries or whatever. I kind of miss the days of just riding a regular bike or rollerblading. I'm a big rollerblader. And there are a lot of safety concerns with these things and a lot of abuse. You know, there's many reasons why, you know, we don't spend a lot of time, my family, at the beach in the summer, but the e-scooters are one of them. I've almost got mowed down a couple times with those things. But I understand that it's kind of a part of the world we live in these days too. So if we are going to have them, it's the same thing. I think we do need to be following through with our bylaws. The trails are, like, that has to be a no-go zone. We need to find a way to have people there and making sure that those trails are not being abused by these vehicles. When, you know, the trails are some of the best things we have in Sylvan Lake for people to walk in the summertime and you know, go out with their families. So I also don't like them. I never really have. I'm a proponent of people exercising, and it's taken away that as well. And I get that we're here, but I would say let's really put a focus, if we're going to do this and continue to have these things, of making sure that we are enforcing the bylaws of our paths, especially, and down at the beach.
I do think there is a value to have these in place. I have met those folks that, I don't know that I've specifically had a grocery conversation, but I do know a number of people that use this for employment. And I had one, I think I came back and shared it with council at the time because we were talking about scooters. Had one conversation when I was doing some work for our HEART committee, and I was at one of the doctor's offices, and I was chit-chatting to someone who rolled up on a scooter and said, oh, wow, it was an interesting time of year. I didn't expect them to be driving it. I feel like it was November, and there was already like a skiff of snow on the ground. And she said, yeah, actually, the whole reason why I was able to stay in Sylvan Lake, and this is where my family is because of she didn't have an e-scooter of her own. But so maybe it wasn't quite before all the orange scooters disappeared, but like right at the end of the season, there was definitely snow on the ground, and I was surprised because we have that program, and she has the option to get to and from work. So she was able to find employment and keep it while she was working out, getting her driver's license. So I thought that was memorable, and I think there's value there. My biggest challenge truly is with youth. I know we're doing some things, and this is just general bike rules in general. Gone are the days where you have like your Safety City school bike safety day, and I feel like we've lost a lot along with safety days, and I know we're doing some neat things with youth education coming up this spring on that avenue, but I'd love to see some restriction around age limits, around helmets, really around going doubles on it. I think there's a place and there's a safe way that you could potentially ride these. It's probably not riding your cooler on your e-scooter down the middle of the road. And I'll tell you, when I see those kids riding around, I'm like, that's awesome. You know, it's kind of hilarious, but also incredibly dangerous. and how do we put those safety restrictions in play? And I do have a bit of a different perspective on paths, because to me, a multi-use pathway, if of a certain width, might be an okay place for it. I don't necessarily think that about a Saturday on Lakeshore, but on some of our trails when they are wide enough, not the ones that are basically motorbikes, that feels different to me. But, you know, a reasonable moving e-scooter feels safer on there to me than it does on a sidewalk that is half of the width, or on the side of the road if we're allowing 12-year-olds to operate it. So I'm challenged a little bit with that, but I think youth is the biggest focus for me when it comes to restrictions.
Okay, so Mr. Lebsack, it sounds to me, at least, that there seems to be a desire to put pen to paper here. Are you feeling like you have what you need from us, or would you like us to give more clarity?
No, I believe I have what I need from you. We will research the other communities. Again, we provided three options there. Those are about the only ones that we could find so far, but you're right, everybody's right in the middle of it right now. So I'll work with other communities, and within probably a few meetings, 3 or 4 meetings, we'll bring back an option from the comments that we heard today, and bring back an option to council for review.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Lebsack. I appreciate it. You're pointing at something, Mayor Hansen. Ian had his hand up? I'm sorry, Ian.
We're going in the right direction. I was going to say Councillor Mern's thoughts are okay with me. I still think there's an advocacy point here that we struggle as municipalities, as communities, around things like these things that don't quite fit anywhere. There's new technologies like these electric motorbikes that, you know, they're not e-bikes in the sense of e-bicycles that we think of. One other thought I think about too is these crowded areas. People are often very upset about the electric scooters in those crowded areas, picturing, you know, a crowded sidewalk on Lakeshore. I've been in a Jane's Walk while 2 adults, of course without helmets, fly by with regular bicycles down the sidewalk, and it's crowded. So it isn't just youth or, you know, we have people that just are not using what we always love to call common sense. So when a sidewalk is crowded, we need to just step off a bike. And when it's super quiet, which is most of the time, even in the summer down at Lakeshore, you can go on an e-scooter or a bicycle on the sidewalk and appropriately pass someone who's pushing their child in a buggy or whatever, right? I mean, it's possible, right? But people aren't using the common sense, and then we end up with needing all these bylaws. But, yep.
I watched on Lakeshore, on the pier, a 35, 40-year-old man on a rental scooter mow down a 10-year-old girl. So it's not always the irresponsible youth or whatever the case is. Sometimes it's just dumb people. Mr. Lebsack?
Thank you. I'll just add one quick comment for information is that the province is currently reviewing the Traffic Safety Act. Now, again, there's no timeline on that. That could be within 6 months. That could be within 2 years. We're not sure. But just, it's been brought up a couple of times. And so, yes, the province has indicated to us that they're reviewing the Traffic Safety Act for a number of different things. So we don't have any timeline on when that might be brought back out.
Councillor Mearns, did you have a question or comment? No? Megan?
On that note, could we send a follow-up note to the minister's office and just see if it's planned to include these items? And we know they won't give us a timeline, but ask if there is one. If they happen to respond back and say, yes, we'll be capturing that within the next 6 months, 12 months, I would be, that might change my direction a little bit, that I'd be okay to hold off for a period of time. I doubt that's the answer you'll be getting, but I'd love to just ask one more time and have that distributed by email just in case it changes something for us.
Was there not a resolution at AUMA, or sorry, at Alberta Munis that referenced e-bikes? I remember something about, yeah, Yeah, which I think are categorized the same thing, but, because it's actually something else too that we may want to consider it in that forum.
I have an email sitting in my draft about adding that to a council agenda to talk about resolutions, so let's certainly not lose that
Yeah, for sure.
for that discussion as well. Because if they are going to do it, I am really keen to let the province have the same rules rather than us create our own. So, you know, while it's nice to do this before summer season, I'd be happy to hold off if there's something coming.
Yeah, and then just one passing comment, just because Councillor Estindi kind of reminded me, despite the fact I generally speaking really in favor of very clearly written and very obviously enforceable bylaws, this is one of those areas where having some loosey-goosey language like operating dangerously or something like that, I think would be quite helpful to have something to that effect, because that gives a bit of discretion to the bylaw officer to ticket somebody who is doing something that may be technically legal in one context but is not in this one, and that's because the sidewalk's busy, or you know, they're rolling down Lakeshore Drive or the Lakeshore Trail when there's a million people around. Like something like that I think would be very valuable, and not just you're allowed to use them on the road so long as you have a helmet, you know, a little more teeth.
Well, the Calgary bylaw actually uses that term, dangerous operation, and there's a $75 fine for dangerous operation.
75.
Or maybe it's more, but there's a fine for dangerous operation, which is not really defined. Yeah, Teach?
Just maybe Joe can answer this for me, and then question for you, Mr. Lebsack. First off, what's for example, 10-year-old girl gets mowed down. What is the insurance behind these e-bikes? Are we responsible for that? Is it the companies? That'd be my question to you. And then to Councillor Iwanicki, the operating dangerously, is that even too subjective? Like when we talk about judges throwing out tickets because they might have come back to pick it up later. Do we even need to be more, like what is operating dangerously, I guess would be my question. Sorry, that was two for two different people, but just popping in my head there.
Yeah, through the chair. So first off, the operating dangerously part is probably very much more enforceable than literally something like littering, because you can prove something that's dangerous to another person, whereas and that's what judges look for. That's what evidence can show, is that you're being dangerous to another person. So that realistically is probably much easier. Yeah, and again, I think I remember the first question was about insurance. Yeah, and so no, there's a very long waiver when you get on one of those rental scooters that is about 12 screens long that you just click yes, I accept, and basically it puts all liability back on the user, and there's no insurance coverage at all based on the town, the company that does it, and probably not the user that's riding it either.
Holly?
I just have to weigh in. I'm an e-bike rider. I like the Town of Hinton's traffic bylaw because it just spells out bicycles and e-bikes. And I like everything they say because it's allowing the use on the sidewalks, the trails, the pathways, with the ability to restrict certain areas if it's an accessibility issue. It is an alternate transportation. So I ride in the summer in Sylvan because I love Sylvan and I don't go to the lake because there usually isn't any room. So we ride in the Summer Village areas and up on 60th, you know, on the pathways, and I'm courteous to people. But I need an e-bike because there are a lot of places where there's hills, but I'm out doing that for recreation. I also have taken my bike to the grocery store to get groceries because I want to get some exercise and I want to get some, you know, at the same time, I want to be outside. So I'd hate to know that we might discourage this kind of use, but there are places where we have to be better. And I think the e-scooters tend to be more of the issue than the e-bikes. But we just have to find the right place for the e-bikes and bikes in general, because I'm confused. Way back when I used to drive my bike and I would put my kids in a bike carrier and I would go down to the lake, because I used to love to go to the lake, I would get yelled at if I was on the sidewalk, because in some places, you weren't allowed to be on the sidewalk. Well, I'm not gonna drive on the road with my kids in a bike carrier. So it's confusing, and we have to be better, knowing how busy Sylvan gets, but we don't wanna take that away from residents and tourists, the ability to bike and take their children down to the lake. The e-scooters is a totally different, in my opinion, it's a different monster altogether. It is, especially the fact that they're at the lake, they're for fun. And fun is good if they're used responsibly. My concern is there's so many of them, and people are banging into tourists. We're just trying to walk the path, and you know, so we have a lot of work to do. I'm not making any specific point exactly, just that it's difficult. We don't want to take away bikes and so on for physical activity, but do we have too many e-bike options? We just have to be very careful when we make decisions on this moving forward, because safety is important.
Councillor Stindy.
Yeah, I was just going to say too, all these different categories of transportation that Councillor Bilodeau is kind of touching on and when I talk about the bikes, I want to be really clear, it's the ones that are the most serious problem to me are what I'm calling loosely electric motorbikes, as opposed to electric assist. And because we're seeing people rip around on the electric motorbikes, and they are doing damage to our parks. The guy who drives in our neighborhood, once in a while, I see him in the summer, and he flies by so fast, and I'm sure it is 70 kilometers per hour, and he's ripping up park surface and drives, and he is, by the way, no youth. He is of middle age and yeah, doing that. But the electric assist bicycle versus the electric motorbike, and this is where I want to see the province truly give us these better definitions of all this new technology, so that then we can regulate better where necessary in our town. And the timing will be everything once this review is done.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other thoughts? No? Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Lepsak. We are council committee and event, our committee and event reports. We will motor through past that if you'd like to read them and speak to the individual councillors if there's something you'd like to address. Upcoming meetings and events. Is it going to be long?
No, I was actually going to get you to say something.
The
Alberta Munis just did their committee appointments, and
yes,
that might be an interesting thing to share.
Yeah, I was appointed to their policing and judicial committee, so that's kind of cool. I look at their meeting schedule. Not sure how that's going to work, but I will make it work. They only meet, I believe, 4 times a year, but it's full-day meetings in Edmonton, so it's going to be a little challenging, but I'm very excited about jumping into that opportunity. I would love to have our own policing committee get together here, but I still haven't heard back from my own security check. But Mr. Lepsak?
Through the chair, if you'd like an update, we now have, after chasing them down over the last week and a half, we now have, well, including mine, 6 of the 7. There's 1 that's still outstanding.
Is that mine?
And, but we do have enough to start the committee now, and so we will be moving forward on that very soon, and we'll be working with them to actually find your application, because
you know we did it.
I know.
Yeah, we did it together, you and I right here.
That's right, I agree, so that's the latest update on that.
Well, that's excellent. You were also appointed.
I was. I'll jump to that next. On the policing committee, luckily you are the alternate, so that does help that we could potentially meet. Mm-hmm. But I am wondering if we need to talk about committee appointments soon. as we do have at least one committee member that expires this year, knowing that it takes 6+ months to get their record check back, we probably need to appoint somebody for the next term by March, I would say. So I guess just raising that to go on the agenda. We certainly can't do the appointments for this in line with our October meeting, because then our current appointees will have expired and we'd have to wait another year for applications. So I'll raise that for you to take away. And yes, I was appointed to the Infrastructure and Environment Committee, which is actually interesting because I applied for a slightly different committee and then they merged two. But I did put in a committee report about it as well with what their planned 2026 actions are. So we'll learn together. Same thing, 4 meetings a year. So.
Should be fun. Upcoming meetings and events. The list is there. The one that I will point out is the Ice Dragon Boat Festival is coming quickly. Valentine's weekend, where we're all expected to be in that boat and pushing hard. We're putting a lot of faith in Councillor Johannesson and his. Physical activity guy.
I have a flag football tournament that weekend.
Oh.
I went to a long time ago. And,
Physical activity guy.
There's a chance I might be able to show up late. I don't know.
We're not going to win without you.
I will just note, if there is a chance, unfortunately, we cannot take weekend of registrations because of the waiver process. So let us know if that chance looks possible, but I do need that back. And also Councillor Payne plus wife, I do need your waivers.
We almost didn't come last year. So. That is just about everything on here. If you want to go through on your own, if you have any questions of clarity, I'm sure Mayor Hansen will be happy to do what she does for me all the time when I text her and say, what am I supposed to do right now? So we have nothing else on our agenda, and Councillor Mearns is wanting to go see his wife whose birthday is today. So we wish her a happy birthday. So we are going to adjourn. Thank you very much, everyone, for the meeting.